I'm going to grout the floor before I move on to a setting wall tile and give some tips as I go along that help make a boring process at least a little bit less of a drudgery. I'm assuming you know the basics of mixing grout, having plenty of sponges and water available, as well as wearing gloves when grouting. I have already grouted about 3 feet from the back wall and have moved to the other end of the closet and grouted about the same footage there. On this end, I've washed the joints down to their finished level and then moving to the other end to do the same. After that, I'm going to change out the water for clean water. That's the first tip, to regularly change out your water for clean. Every bit of grout that goes on the floor and doesn't make it into a grout joint has to ultimately be removed. That process makes your water get dirty really quickly. I know it's a hassle, but it will save you time in the long run. The second tip is to wash down your joints using a circular motion with your sponge. You're trying to get your joints to the surface level of the tile. If you're dragging your sponge down the length of the joint, there's a good possibility that you're actually scraping grout out of the joint. So washing your joints with the circular motion helps to get the joint to the level of the tile. Third, let's talk about the consistency of the grout. That has a lot to do with how porous your tile is. That is, how quickly does it soak the moisture out of the grout. In this case, I can mix my grout about the consistency of soft serve ice cream. This allows me time to float a pretty good sized area and have time to wash the joints down and get the majority of the grout off the tile before it sets up. On a side note, as you're floating grout into your joints, let your joints be the focus. In this case, these are 16 by 16 inch tiles, and there's no point in smearing grout across the center of the tile. It just has to be washed off later. So concentrate on getting the grout in the joints. Once you have a pretty good idea of how the grout is reacting to the tile, the fourth tip becomes important for helping to speed up the process. Try breaking up the grout job floor area into a number of smaller units. Then after you spread grout in one area, you can move to another area and spread another layer of grout there. By the time you finish the second area, the first area is probably ready for you to begin washing down the joints. Once you have completed that, then the second area should be ready for its initial wash down. It keeps you moving, but it does increase your speed and efficiency. Now that the grout is at the level we want and it has taken an initial set, it's time to get as much of the dust off the tile as possible before we even consider starting to buff it down. It could be buffed down right now, but the problem is you end up getting a lot of that dust airborne, which is not only bad to breathe, but it also puts a coat of dust on furniture or anything else that's in the room. So it's back to changing out the water and wiping down the tile again, only this time using the sponge just for the purpose of making single passes of a couple of feet with one side of the sponge, then flipping it over and making another pass. Swap out the sponge for another one in the bucket and do the process again. You'll be amazed that there is still a dust film that will dry on the tile, but it's significantly less after this pass. I created more work for myself here by getting a little overambitious in how much grout I could spread and not get behind. I got a little delayed in the closet area, and by the time I moved back out to the main floor, my grout had set up a little more quickly than I anticipated. It just meant I had to take more time and scrub harder to get the grout to turn loose from the surface of the tile. I was off maybe 5 or 10 minutes. You can imagine the problem I would have had if it had been several hours. This just emphasizes that you need to understand how your particular tile is reacting to being grouted. Grout setup times can vary greatly from different types of tile. I'm finally down to my last bucket of clean, fresh water and making a final pass over the last area to be grouted to get as much dust off as possible. So after a little over 5 hours, I'm ready to be done. I wish I could say there were easy ways to make a grout job go quicker. The only way to get done faster is to work faster and more efficiently. But grouting tile is not one of those jobs you want to get frustrated by and rush through just to get finished with it. Listen to some music and work your way through the process to make sure you get a grout job that looks as good as your tile work. Finally, take some furniture polish and clean rags and buff the tile to remove the final layer of dust. Finish it off with a good vacuuming and you're done.